Hello, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we build Django apps and are going to continue on the homeschool application that I'm building. And tonight the plan is to work on some general features requested by my customers. Before we get into that, I want to thank my patrons for supporting me. I want to thank Rupert, Andrew, Abdulaziz, Patrick, Eric, and Philip. If you enjoy this content after you see what's going on here and want to support me, you can head on over to patreon.com/mblehman and sign up for one of the tiers there. And that helps me pay for things that I do, like podcasts and hosting and all this other stuff that goes on that I try to do for the Django community. So that'd be really helpful, and I'm grateful for the support. Also, if you're catching this video later on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, do things that you see based on the content, and check out the description below. They usually have more information down there to help you out, and that helps me get seen by others. So thanks for doing that. All right, let's jump into the work for today. I'm going to start actually with a cleanup task, and as I do this, I should note that you're free. This stream is about building Django apps in a real app and doing stuff in a real world scenario. So you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's really what I am here for, aside from getting work done on my project. And the whole point of this is to go on a journey with me and see what it's like to do the real thing. But if you have questions along the way, if something is unclear, I have some fairly well-developed knowledge of Django because I've been working with it for a long time, and I will be happy to pause and try and answer those questions as you might have them. All right, so the first thing I want to do, though, is do a bit of cleanup. So I switched recently, or I added to my project a hub of information for myself. So I created a Slack group that will be the central nexus for all of the information about my system. So anything from Stripe signup information to error tracking stuff from Rollbar will be funneled into my Slack channel, and so that I can monitor how my site is doing. And one of the areas that I've added to that is a Slack inbound webhooks. And the reason I did that is primarily to eliminate a different mechanism I was getting information. So when a user would sign up for the service, I sent an email to the support account, and that I could check that email address and see if anybody new had signed up. It was just a good way to gauge, like, am I getting any traction with this application? But I'm currently on the free tier of SendGrid, which has a limited number of emails. So every email that I send has, counts against the total amount that I get for a day. So if I have a sign up, that counts as 2 emails instead of just 1. And the free tier for SendGrid, free forever, which is great, is a pretty low number. So I'm looking to kind of stretch out the number of signups that I could have for a day in case there's a sudden burst in popularity, which I haven't had yet, but I want to be prepared and not hit the limit right out of the gate. So as part of that, I decided to switch my notification from going from email that was sent to my support account to a notification that I would directly receive in Slack. So when a new user signs up, there's a Slack webhook, and the website will send data to that webhook to indicate that, hey, there's a new user that signed up. But I had left in the old code that would send the support account an email message, and I recently, in the last day or so, got a new sign up and saw both the Slack webhook work and the email work. So I'm confident that the new system is working, and it's time to rip out the old email notification. So there was a lot of talking. I think the actual change is going to be pretty minimal. It's probably going to be rip out a couple of lines of code and then remove some test code, and that might be the extent of it. So we're going to go into the users models area, and you can see I've even got a to-do here. So this is the line that we're going to take out, is this call to send email, and you can see what it was doing. It was just sending this very simple text message email to the email account, and it would say the user's username, and then nothing important in the body. I just had to put something there. I guess I technically didn't have to, but I chose to. And now, as an alternative, you can see that the Slack gateway that I've got here will send the same kind of message to Slack directly. So the first thing I want to do is take out this chunk of code. so that now on a sign up, there's no longer going to be an email. It'll simply be a notification. And so the effect of that is that we've got a couple of unused imports here that we can take those out. So the call to the send mail command and the settings call are no longer necessary. So that gets cleaned up as well. So we drop a couple of lines of code. And then the other thing I want to do is run PyTest. Now, if I wrote my test correctly, I have like 100% coverage for this application. I should, in theory, get some kind of failure because I should have tested that did I get a mail when a new account is created. And that's probably going to come in the user's app, which towards the end of the test suite, assuming that I did my job well. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so there's a failure that tests that an email is received when there's a sign up. And now we can go clear out that test because it's no longer something that we're trying to achieve. So we'll go to the users test models file and look for that sign up thing. Notify of sign up was the function to call, and we can just get rid of this test. Although I guess technically now maybe I should have an additional test to prove it. Well, let's do two things. Let's comment out this test for a moment because we might still want to call that. And I guess we need a pass to put it in there so it's actually valid. And the thing that we want to do is I want to run PyTest again. But before I do that, I actually want to go back to the file that we were just looking at, the models file. And in this call to the gateway, I want to comment this out. I think this is where I messed up. So if I run the PyTest suite now, what I suspect will happen is that the whole suite's going to pass. And that's not good because it's telling me that I didn't test the fact that a sign up, it should send a message to Slack. So we want to make sure that we have that test captured. That was a mistake on my part. So this is passing, even though I would expect it to fail in reality. And so now I'm going to come back to this, and I think rather than delete this test case, maybe what we'll really do instead is repurpose it and get rid of the mail checking stuff that's here. And we want to check instead that, let's mock out the Slack gateway because we don't want to send real messages to Slack, so that's important to do. So I'm going to patch out the Slack gateway, which is now going to be in homeschool users models Slack gateway. It's the thing that we're trying to mock out. And I'm going to add a new, not a new attribute. This attribute's been around for a long time. I'm going to add this auto spec true attribute. And the auto spec attribute, I need to get better about using it. I was reminded of it recently. But what it does is it says like the thing that you're mocking out, make sure you follow the same thing's interface. So what this will mean in practice is that I've got this send message method that I'm going to call. If I were to, for instance, pass in 2 arguments to it, then that's wrong. And because the send message interface only expects a single string. So we can, by adding auto spec true, it just kind of keeps you honest that you're calling the right thing, even though you've mocked out the real class. So we need to import from unit test, import mock to get the actual mock library. And that brings that into play. And then we also need to add, so mock does an injection, so we need to have a mock Slack gateway. And I saw it recommended recently to not use the name mock with your mocks. And I think that was an interesting piece of advice. And I'm not going to share the article because I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody, but it's not worth bringing up where it came from. But I just talked to it generally. And the individual said, like, look, if you have mocks in there, it kind of puts you in a mindset that these are fake things. And yeah, that's true. And you know, there is an argument to say call this Slack gateway. But here's the danger in this, that the reason I don't actually recommend it. Sometimes you bring in the real thing, and if you bring in a real import, and that's what I mean. Like if I was to somehow in this test, maybe I needed the real Slack gateway, and if I have this thing called Slack gateway, then what I'm doing is shadowing the variables, and I find that to be not a good thing. So in my opinion, having an extra mock on your or a mock descriptor on the front of your mocks is a fine way to go about things. That's my personal take, but each their own, I suppose. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to set, I want to check that the mock is called, and I want to check that that the username that I'm signing up with is in the message that was sent. I don't care about the specifics of the message. Really, the intent of the message that I send to Slack is, what is the username? Could I go look this person up in the system if I needed to? So I'm going to pull out of the first thing to do is call mock. Let's get the arguments out of the mock call. So we say mock Slack gateway. The method that we want to be called is called send message, and I think this is where I'm going to bring up the unit test documentation. I think there's a new attribute that was, and again, it's not like new, but it's newer in a more recent version of Python, that you can pull out like arguments or keyword arguments directly out of mock. And I'm in the wrong file. That's what or in the wrong documentation. I'm realizing that now. So really I want to go to unit test mock, which has its own page. And when we're here, I'm looking for maybe params or keyword args. And there should be a place where we can just pull that out. Call args. Yeah, here it is. So we've got call args. I think that's what I want. So we want to do, I don't want to call this params. I want to call this args, because this method is using positional arguments, which is what args typically stands for. And we want to say call args, and then we can do args like that, I believe. And once we have args, then we can say args should be a list kind of structure. And we want to check that the username is in args, the first argument passed into the call. So args 0. And right now, if I run this test, that should fail because it should not be called at all. So there's nothing, there's a none type, which is unsurprising. And then if we actually set that and run it again with any luck, yeah, the test passed, because call args wasn't populated the first time because send message was never called. But now that it is, we have a list and we can check in there, and we've got this format string and confirm that the username is in fact in the notification. So that is the cleanup that takes us, that repurposes the test, which I guess now that I'm noticing that, I should rename the test method name. So we'll say, instead of test sends email, we want to say sends message. And a sign up sends a message to Slack. Okay, so now that feels accurate. And this also gives us the opportunity to get rid of these calls to settings and mail. We don't need those anymore. And so we've cleaned those out as well. So we will run PyTest one more time to make sure that everything is happy. And we can see here that it's all good. I'm going to go ahead and commit that, and then we'll move on to the next issue for the evening. Let me review the diff one last time to make sure it looks sane. So we got rid of some imports. We got rid of the call to send mail. We left the call to the Slack gateway, and then we did this repurposing of the unit test to check that the Slack gateway got called. We'll remove mail sending on signup. Remove mail sending to support email on signup. That's really what we're after. All right, so we've got that commit. Now that was kind of the warm up for the evening of here's something that I just needed to clean up. Now we're ready to move on to something a bit more substantial, another feature in the application that I think will be useful for the app. One of the things that my spouse requested, and as a reminder, if you've not watched the stream before, this is an application that I'm building initially for my spouse with the intent of opening it up to other homeschool families in the future. So she's my primary customer. But one of the things that she was requesting is there's a progress report page, and she's looking to have that page include averages for grades that are on that page. And so let's take a look at the page. This should be a pretty self-evident feature, I would hope, but we'll show it off anyway, and so you can get a good idea of what the expectation should be, and then we'll go ahead and build it. So on the app, we'll return to the app. I've got some data in this test account, and we should be able to go to the reports section, and here are a couple of students, and we can view their progress report. And the progress report assembles all of the grades that are related to the student for all of the classes. And you can see there's a bunch of numbers here. There's a score, there's a completion date, and so on. And what we're really looking for is a number that should go at the bottom of it. So I'll probably represent this with something like another row that gets tacked onto the bottom after each class. And the row will have the same horizontal dimensions. I'll probably list a text area that will be right aligned, that will be right next to the average itself. And I'll just use the word average for now. I think additionally, the values that are here represented are all integer values. And I don't really see, in thinking about my own schooling growing up, I don't remember receiving like partial percentage stuff. So we're going to go with an integer value for the actual average itself, even though, if you do the math, you will probably come up with values that have fractional elements to them. And we're just going to do some rounding and make sure we get the right number there. So that's the plan. It's each one of these will have its own computation. I think it's going to be interesting because there's actually the way this is put together is it's a pretty straight list, and we're using some Django template tags, and that's going to break down because now we're going to have to add this additional bit of metadata that is going to require this to be restructured. So we're going to have to change the way the context is put together. And instead of like a single query with one loop thing, it's going to be more complicated than that. And that's the reality of making a more complex report sometimes. So let's first go to the actual view. The view is in the schools app. It's in the views file. And I was working on this recently to add some other additions that she was requesting. There's some misordering stuff that's already there. So we have a basis for building a lot of this out. And really what needs to happen is we have to change the crux of all of this is this grades list right now. And I guess we should also look, I suppose, at the actual template. You'll see how the template has to do some reformatting here. And it's, at some level, it's a little sad because there's this nice convenient template called regroup that Django provides that what it does is it takes a flat list and it breaks it up onto some attribute that you specify, and then we'll group that into clusters. And in this case, because the grades were ordered by course, we could do a regroup on the course relationship and get a list of courses that were the values in each of the lists were the grades that we needed to display. So we're going to have to do that stuff manually because we still want the grouping by courses and we still want the grades, but now we also want the grade average, and there's not an easy way to toss that information in there. So I don't think we need to spend any time on the template yet. We'll get the structure that we're looking for and then come back to this. So instead, what I think will ultimately be here is rather than having something like grades in the context, instead I think what I'm going to want is something like courses in the context. or course info, or I always get this, like, whenever there are these new dictionary structure that is, because it's not really course objects that I'm referring to in the context. It's really going to be a list, and that list will have dictionary elements, and that dictionary will be something like, let's just kind of sketch it out. It's going to be a dictionary that will have a key of course, it will have a key of grades that will be all of the related ordered grades, and it will have a key of, we'll say, to be more specific, we'll say grade average rather than just average. And that'll be a grade average that we'll have to calculate and compute. So those are the things that will go in each of these. And this thing it's a dictionary. So it's not a list. This thing, the context name of courses is not really accurate. So it's more like course details, but that doesn't pluralize very well, because it's details is not a great word, and sometimes I've tried to use info, but that doesn't really pluralize well either. So there's not a perfect name for this, I think. So I think we'll kind of just say, okay, it's not the best name, but we'll call it courses, and we'll write the good test so to assert that it's not in fact a list of courses, it's a list of something else. And then we will make the template work with this data structure. So we have this thing here. I think the next thing to do is bring up the test case, and we will modify the view that's there to actually work with our expected structure. So here's, again, I was working on these reports recently, so we're kind of right in the area of the progress report model, I believe. Or sorry, the progress report view. Here are the tests already for it. We have a get test right here, and we need to check on. Yeah, I think we can probably use this test here that has the grades context. And it says only student grades. I'm going to change this to be only student courses, because it's ultimately the same thing. It's just a grouping perspective. So the representation that we're really looking for, the thing that we want to assert on, is assert that what am I trying to say? Assert that the courses looks like this. We'll do the same sort of cast, although this time I guess we don't need to. It's not a query set, so that's fine. We'll say get context, and we'll say courses, and we're going to check on the whole structure because we don't have a ton of data in here. I could test on the ordering and put more values in here to get a more accurate result, but I don't want to. So we need to get the grade. We've got a grade factory. All right, so here's the grade that we care about. The grade, the course is like way high in the chain. So we'll say, first thing we'll say is course. And that's going to be grade, graded work. Nope, is that right? Yep, graded work, course task, course. There's quite a chain of models that come into place here. So that's going to be the first piece that we want to check. The next bit is, what did I say? The actual grades. So this should be the same as what was in the previous context. We'll say grade. And then we want the grade. No, actually, grade average is a pretty crummy name. Let's do course average. That's more accurate. And so the course average is going to be the same as the grade. What is the variable name that I use? Score, I think. Is that right? Let me go check that model. So the students models has this grade concept, and we've got a score. Yeah, a score. So there should be a value there that comes out. And I don't remember if I made the factory pick a score or if I just used the default of 0. And either way, since we're only doing a single grade for this student, when you do averaging, this is probably where I probably should do a more accurate test to make sure that the grade computation is correct. And perhaps we will in a moment. But from the outset, I just want to pick something that is easy math. So an average of one value is going to be just the value, right? So grade score should be the course average. So this test should fail because we've not created this structure at all. Yep, so there's no context there. So we'll build it up one piece at a time. So thanks, Apple. We'll start by saying what? We'll say, well, let's build this context in a method. I don't think there's any reason to build all this stuff. Like this context data method's already quite large. So we're going to be massaging the grades set query that's come back. And I think we can do that away from the rest of the context data. So let's come back in and for the moment here, comment out this chunk of code. We'll say context, and we'll say courses. That's the thing that we're building. And build courses info. And it's going to take the grades, because it can do all of its work just based on purely on this list. Now that made my editor happy, but if I ran that course right now, that method doesn't exist yet, so we need to make it. So let's do build courses info, take self and take the grades, and we'll say regroup, which probably pick a better name, but if the stock string is informative, regroup the grades into an appropriate display structure for the template. All right. Oh, right at column 88. We nailed it on black. Black was going to complain if we got even one character more. And for the moment, the first step I'm going to do is return an empty list. So the purpose of this is that we can run the test again and see that it's no longer a key error. It's now comparing an empty list against stuff that doesn't match. Oops. And it also shakes out the fact that I typed the test in wrong, so it's graded work. So we're not getting the key error, but now you can see that we're getting the empty list on one side, and we're getting this longer list that we expect, this structure that we expect on the other side. Okay. So next thing to do is to take the grades and how to do this. We could do this probably in, trying to think if we can do it in a single looping pass. That would be optimal, but I don't know that we can. Well, I'm sure we always could. I just don't know how clean it would be and if it's worth it to go for that level of performance. You kind of want to avoid looping over a big structure, but this isn't actually going to be that many items. It's not like we're looping over millions of records here. It could, at its worst, there could be, a course could have a lot of grades in it. I don't know how aggressive people might get with their grades. And if you consider a school year for a student, and maybe the student is in 12 courses in a school year, I don't know, I'm just picking a number out of the sky, and each course has 20 to 30 grades, you can start to do the math and see how this does become a number in the hundreds, possibly even the thousands. But computers don't really bat an eye at numbers that are that small generally, unless you were doing like that amount of computation in a loop and doing queries on the database, which would definitely be very bad. But that's not the case here. So I think what that means is, what I want to do is we're going to replace the empty list here. We'll start by saying courses is the empty list, and we'll change the variable, and we're going to fill this courses in with a bunch of dictionaries. And so we'll do the kind of naive solution first, and that's going to be to iterate over the grades. The grades have already been sorted, so there's some order by logic that's above there. So we don't have to do any special sorting or comparison of the individual grades as we get them, but we'll say for grade in grades. And we will then, we're going to check if the course is in the list. Oh man, that's a bummer. So this is a list. Just trying to think through here. Checking the list would be pretty frustrating. So maybe we can introduce a map. So this is a performance consideration that actually is important, perhaps. When you do nested lists, that's when performance can get scary, get bad. And so as I'm building out this list of courses, I'll do the naive solution first, and so you can see what I'm talking about and understand what I'm talking about, and then we'll talk about how to make it better. So we have to check, have we even seen this course yet? So if the grade and all this work has been prefetched, so this is some attribute access on this stuff, which has some cost, but it's not going to be that expensive. But I am going to put it in a local variable. Is that what I want to do? Because we're going to be assigning, yeah. Well, we'll put it in a local variable for now. So we'll put it in this local variable. It also makes some of these if statements much shorter. So if the course is in, and this is where we can't just say if the course is in courses, because that list of courses, again, is not actually a list, it's a list of dictionaries. So what we'd have to do is check, iterate through each, loop through each one, which is kind of pretty dumb. So it would look like for course info in courses. And this is not going to be the final code, just so we're very clear, but I wanted to show what this naive version would look like. So then if we say course, if the course info is in here, if these things match, actually it's not even it's an equality. So if they match, then you want to take some action. In this case, like add the task to that grouping of course info. But this is super inefficient, because now you've got for every grade you have to loop through, which I said could be in the range of 1,000 tasks, and then let's say you have 12 courses or more. I don't know, just picking like what I think might be an average for a school year. Then you've got 2 nested loops, and you're not going to get through every loop. There's ways you could break out of this, but you're talking about now multiplying 1,000 by perhaps 12, and 12,000 iterations of a couple of nested loops. That does begin to be problematic from a computation point of view. So we want to track which courses have been seen. and are added to this course info without the performance hit. And the way to do that is pick the appropriate data structure. So there are certain data structures that can check if something is in there, and if something is in a larger data structure, and do that without iterating through the whole thing. Internally, it usually does that by hashes and all these other techniques. But if you rely on a set is one way to go about this, or checking on dictionary keys is another fast operation that doesn't have to check a bunch of stuff. Again, these internally rely on hashes to make this computation fast. So I think what we really need to do is have a secondary structure that kind of says, have I seen this? And that structure will avoid this nested loop business and give us some actually good performance characteristics. So for the moment, I will actually create a new variable, and I'm going to call it seen courses, and it's going to be equal to an empty set. So we'll do that, and we're going to simplify this down and get rid of that nested for loop nonsense. We're going to say if the course if the course is in the seen courses, then we're not going to create anything new. In fact, I think what we really want is only the scenario where the course is not in this. And again, I'm starting to think through the structure. I'm thinking the way that I'm building this is perhaps I'm pushing myself down a path that like it doesn't feel right. Because how then next do we do the lookup? Like if I've seen this course, then I need to, and I'm building a course info that is a collection of graded lists and stuff, then how do I get that out and add something more to it and then move on to the next grade? I think that's all wrong. So I'm going to rethink this whole problem, because there we can take advantage of some knowledge that we know about the grades that are coming in. And in fact, I'll put the note here in the doc string because it's going to be an important precondition. And we'll say grades must be sorted by course. That's going to be critical, because we're going to have like a tracking element, and we're going to keep track of the way to know to build the next item, to increment a counter and add to the next list, is to check, does the course of the current task match the course that we're keeping monitoring. So kind of, I don't know, it might be best just seen through code. And that will allow us to build up a list and regroup it without having to mess with dictionaries and checking and extra status stuff. So let's get rid of this stuff. Let's just back up our way of thinking about this until we get what we're looking for. So the thing that I want to call this is we're going to start on the outside of this loop. We're going to have this essentially kind of a cursor of thing that we're going to track, and it's going to be an empty value to start. And so we want to say that the we'll call it, this will be next course. Will be the course that we extract from the current grade. And what we want to do is, if the course does not equal to the next course, then we know that we're in a scenario where we're looking at a new course. We're looking at grades related to a new course. And so what that will signal to us to do is to append some course information. And we're going to start with what? We'll say that the first thing to do is reset the current, the pointer, move it to like the next course. So we'll say course is equal to the next course. And that will be the one thing to check there. And then we need to have course information that we want to add to the system. So we need a dictionary that's going to hold all this stuff. And so that, I guess we can start probably with that as a local variable as well. And for this one, do we want to start with an empty dictionary or just none? Let's start with none. So first, let's walk through this kind of mentally. We've got the set of grades. We want to start to create this list of dictionaries like I've shown up above here. And we want to populate it with initially a list of grades and then a score. And this will also help with the computation of averages in a moment and all sorts of other goodies. Or maybe maybe this will, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we'll stay focused. So we've got the course set. We want to set the course info, and we want to append the course info to the list of courses. That's going to be important. So we'll say the course info is going to be a dictionary, and it's going to have the course that we just set as the thing to track. It's going to have the grades, and the very first grade is going to be the current grade that we're on. So that's going to be that. And then we can put the course, we'll calculate the course average later. So that'll go in the dictionary, but it'll be on the next go around, I think. Yeah, let's punt on the grade part right now. I know that we can do this in this way. It's possible, but when do we do it exactly is the bit I'm not less certain about. And then we're going to take this course info thing that we just created, and we're going to append it to the list of courses. Okay. So now what should happen with this? This is kind of like the regroup template tag that we just saw. In fact, this might be really close to the implementation. It's checking a parameter. In this case, it's the course. And it's going to compare that to the previous version, and they don't match. So it'll set that. It'll regroup this stuff into a dictionary. And we're going to set all these attributes, and we're going to append it to the list. So the thing that should come out the other side as courses should now be a list of, yeah, in fact, I bet this would even pass. So let's comment this out. So this might be the best way to prove it. Let's see if I got it right. I didn't. Okay, what did I do wrong? Curious. We did something wrong. Because I thought what would happen is it would go through the loop, it would go through the list of grades that it got. There'd be only one. So next course should be different from none, which would trigger this if statement. It would set that stuff, set the course info, and populate it in there, which would be a dictionary inside of a list. And then it would return the courses. Maybe I did use this, correct? Yeah, I did. So, oh, sorry, did I go through that too fast? I apologize. The results from the test are coming back and saying it's still an empty list. So that's why I'm confused. Like, I would not expect it to be an empty list. It's almost like it didn't hit the condition that I thought it did. So we could probably step through this and see what's up. So let's do that. Let's drop a breakpoint and run the test and see what grades looks like and step through with the debugger. So I really need to update my debugger shortcut command. I'm still using PDB. I know that I'm on on newer versions of Python, I could use debugger or whatever the command is now to get the same statement, but I haven't done that yet. So let's rerun the test. I think I also need to tell PyTest to allow standard output, or I think it's the -s flag. All right, so here we are right above the for loop. Wow, that's a really deep traceback. That's way more than you probably wanted to see. But it shows that we're at least in the proper helper method. And if I do a list, you can see we're right above the set trace. If I print on grades, we have a query set with one object, which is the one grade object that I expect. And the courses attribute should be an empty list right now. All right, so all good so far in my mind. So we will step to the next one. Whoops, I guess we didn't need to step into the iterator. That's annoying. We'll step over, we'll go over this, and let's print the next course now. So it's a course. Okay, great. That seems right. So since they don't equal, I anticipate it should go into the if statement, because if I print course, that should be none. So if I hit next, it's on that next line. Next again, here's the course info, populating that. And then we append the course info to courses. Did I type anything wrong? No, it all seems okay so far to me. So now let's look at what is courses. It should now be, yeah, there it is. It's the dictionary structure with course and grades. Cool. The for loop should fail. So let's list, we're back at the top of the for loop. If I hit next, we go to the return. Okay, where are we now? Oh, we're still at the bottom. Okay, next, we're back at, sometimes I lose my place when I'm using the debugger. We're finishing the context. Did I forget to, I don't know. Well, okay. I bet, you know what I bet I forgot to do? I probably forgot to save in this file. I probably wrote all of that function and it worked just fine, and I bet I forgot to save. Okay. Let's run it one more time to prove that it's still working. Okay, it's working. Well, sanity restored. Sometimes check your saves. Better mark that flaky test indeed. Okay, so the next piece of this is now the actual average computation. And so what is the average computation? It's the sum of the number of items divided by the actual length, right? And the only thing that we need to do is make sure we round that appropriately, so it's not just truncating it. Well, I mean, I guess it could truncate it, but that would probably confuse people, and I'm sure it's somebody. I can totally imagine some customer in the future being like, I did the calculation by hand and it was a 92.3 and it says the score is 92 instead of, well, that's a bad example. There's a 92.6 and it says the score is 92 instead of 93. That's not right. So we need to make sure that the rounding is appropriate, and not just do integer rounding, or integer truncation, I guess, floor calculation. So the next thing I want to do is put in the actual, I want to make the test fail again. It's not going to have this course average. And we need to figure out what is the time in this little loop that we can actually do this course average computation. We want to do it after the grades are done. So, there's some edge cases in here. This is where, like, if you're ever in a software interview and they check you on, did you write some chunk of code? What many of those interviews are looking for is, are you able to keep up with all the edge conditions? The edge condition in here is we can calculate the grade, but if we're not careful, we're going to lose the calculation of the last average, which is kind of silly, but we can make sure to do that properly. So every time we append a new course info, that's the start of a new thing. So this is actually like the last thing that we want to do. So really down the place to do the computation for grades is actually before we set the next dictionary here. And this will work every time except for the very first time. So we want to say there's a special edge case. So don't compute average until a course is collected. And that special edge case occurs when the course is none. So if the course is not none, then we know that we're actually a few iterations in, right? So it's done, it's pulled together all of the course tasks. Actually, no, it hasn't. We haven't appended actual extra grades. We need to correct that too. But this is the time when a new course is about to be set on the list and replace the course info pointer dictionary that we're pointing to. So now is the time to do the average computation. So I'll just put a pass here for the moment. Say compute the average. That's what we're going to do next there. Man, I cannot type actual words, it seems. All right, but there's a flaw in this logic. But before we get to that, let's talk about the other time the other scenario that we need to consider. When the course is the same, it means we already have set the course info object. So if we're in the else part of this, if the course is equal to the next course, then we want to append the current grade to the list of grades that's in the course info. So we have confidence that this isn't going to happen until one course has been set. And so we can say at this point, course info, we can key into grades, and we can say append grade. And we should definitely write a test for this. In fact, I've got a 100% unit test requirement, and so this line is not going to get hit until we do the right thing here. Oh, man. And the type checker is also catching me and making sure I'm honest here. Fine. We'll change this to be, instead of a none, we'll change it to be a dictionary. I know what's going on here. My pike and pound sand. All right, so now that should effectively collect all of the grades. And then the other edge condition that I mentioned is when we are on the last grade is not going to change a course. So it's going to it will aggregate this and it will put this in the grades list. It'll loop back to the top and there will be no more grades to iterate over, and it will fall out the bottom. So what does that mean? It means that the last course info will not have its average calculated because it won't come back into this section right here. So we need to say, we need a compute average of last course to catch the edge case. Hopefully that logic is clear enough. If it's not, I can try and explain it again. This is a trick we're trying to do. I'm doing this, like, I guess for performance reasons. And using tracking variables, this course and course info, and using like resetting the values and using that as counters. And so we're kind of overriding values, and the meaning of course and the meaning of course info changes as we're iterating through that loop, which is not something that you normally want to do a lot of. But here it's an appropriate thing to do. It just means that we just have to be a little careful to consider the actual implications of some of these changes. And we'll put in more comments, and this is why I'm a fan of comments. I think they're actually helpful. So we'll say on the first iteration, when course is none, there's nothing collected yet. It's going to be too long. Yep, too many characters. Okay, just how about, will this work? Nothing is collected yet? Okay, short enough for black. And then we'll say compute the average. And so I'll use we'll create another helper method, and we'll give it, what should we give it? We'll just pass the whole course info, because I was about to say we could do course info and then set the key and say course average, but really that's going to be annoying because then we'd have to do that below. So let's do this. Let's say self compute course average, and pass in the whole course info that we've been building up. We can delete that comment because the helper method is appropriately named. And we'll say def compute course average, self the course info, and compute the average for the course based on collected grades. And there's probably arguments to say like, well, maybe these should be methods on the course model, and yeah, there's probably those arguments. I'm putting this stuff in the view, and I've talked through this in past streams. Is I'm actually okay. I'm okay being a little uncomfortable about having business logic and views, and it's when you find yourself wanting to reuse that business logic, like you know where the computation is originally. And I've done this in the past, and I've refactored it out. But I don't know that this code is going to be used anywhere else in the system yet. And so I don't want to jump the gun and design something that is like over-engineered and pollute the course model with stuff that might not actually be needed in multiple places. So we will also say compute the course average and give it the last course info here. So this should all be safe. Haha, no, not quite. So there is another edge case to catch here. What if there are no grades? So if I did that and then passed it into this thing and tried to pull out values right here directly from the dictionary, then I'm going to get key errors. So we'll do, we'll just have this return. So if not course info, in other words, you're an empty dictionary, then return. So there's that safety case when no grades exist. Because this context data is going to still, this method here of building course info is going to be called all the time. It's going to be called, every time this view is called, whether there's anything there or not. So we just need to have the safety mechanisms in place. And in fact, maybe a better safety mechanism, rather than burying it way down here, is to just bail early. So if there's no course info, so if there are no grades, then there's no course info, and we can return an empty list. That's safer. That moves it higher in the stack, and lets us think without considering silly edge cases down at the bottom. And we'll have to test that too, because again, my code coverage tools are going to complain and say like, why haven't you computed this? Okay. So now we're at a point where we have the course info. We need to calculate the average. And so this course info, if it even got here, let me think through this. Is there a scenario where this could be empty and we could get into a divide by zero stuff? Because if there are no grades, then you could get into divide by zero trouble, and you don't want that to happen, because computers will it'll raise a zero division error exception because it can't divide by zero. So will course info always have a value by the time it gets to this method? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes because of this guard clause. So since there's always at least one grade in the list, there's always going to be at least one iteration through this loop, which means that course info will always be, by the time it gets to this line or this other computed line, it will have this information at minimum, which is a list of grades. So I'm not worried about divide by zero errors. I'm confident that the grades will always be there. In fact, I'm so confident that I'm going to just pull them directly out of the dictionary. And that, even in and of itself, is proof positive that it'll be non-zero. Because look, there's always, at least when this thing is created initially, a list with a single item of the first grade in it. So confident that the math will always be right, and I'm fairly confident that grades will always exist in this dictionary when it's called. And I could be wrong, but that's based on my static assessment of this code. That's what I see. So let's pull out grades, and we'll say course info, course info grades, and the key of grades, there we go. And we want to set, we're not actually returning anything here. We're going to modify the course info in place. I normally don't really care for doing that, but that's how this chunk of code works out. And we want to say the grades, what we're really looking for is the sum of the scores divided by the length of the grades list. So this is going to be a list of grade objects. So we can say sum of grade dot score for grade and grades, and that syntax should be valid. And then we'll say divided by length of grades. Now this is going to get us our floating point value. And I never quite remember what the right built-in function is when we want to get actual rounded values appropriately. We're not looking to do integer division, as I said. We're not looking to truncate, so we need to get the right rounding value. But I think that round is not quite the method we're looking for, so we'll check that out in a minute. Because it does like bankers rounding or something. The rules are weird, and I don't do enough math in Python typically to encounter these kind of issues that I have to keep that in my head. So, but I'm hopeful that this will be a sum of the score of one value divided by a length of one. It actually might still fail because it might be difference in types. It might report of a integer versus a float. No, but it did the cache properly. So at least got that. So now we need like real more real testing data to give us the confidence that the average calculation is what I expect it to be, and that we did this extra line checking. Yeah, a decimal package. I don't know that I want to convert all these to decimal, because I'm really just looking for a rough calculation, and it's not like we're doing dollars and cents. But yeah, you're right. The decimal package does have some good stuff. So let's go to built-in functions. And the other place we might look is there's a math library, right? That has mathematical functions. What's in here? For fmod. And they probably call it mean or something mathy. Trigonometry. Maybe it's not in here. Maybe it's just one of the built-ins. Tau. Awesome. Glad to see tau in there. That's cool. Okay. So over here, there is this round function. Hi, Toon Hobby. Welcome. Thanks for joining in. We're doing some progress report building on the app tonight, and we're doing averages. And so it's telling folks on the stream that I don't do enough math to know if the averages are what I expect. So we're trying to get that right. Okay, return. It returns the nearest integer to its input. All right, we might just have to play with this in the shell. See if it provides the behavior that I'm expecting. So let's stop this and oh, cool. Yeah, I'm glad you heard about it on Django Chat. I try and do this weekly. And I'm not always. Sometimes I take vacation, but I like to do some Django streaming. Okay, so we want to do some averages. We've got let's say 9.4 is the number we're going to work from. We'll say round 9.4. I would expect that to go down to 9, right? Okay, round 9.5 goes up to 10. All right, maybe it's not as crazy as I think it is. I really thought, all right, I want to search for this. It's called Python bankers round. What is this? Because I think it's perplexing. Or it's a well-known algorithm, but I don't. Hopefully there's some answer here that helps me understand it. Exact halfway cases are now rounded to the nearest even instead of away from 0. Oh, that's what? Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that it's that's confusing. So we happen to pick an odd, but if we did round of 2.5, so typical math class or maths, if you're not American, I don't know how many countries use maths. Anyway, in mathematics, this would go up to 3, right? But it goes down to 2, which is what the hell? Excuse me. What the heck? And yeah, that's just strange. So the question is, how do we get the real rounding behavior that we want? I don't actually want this kind of behavior. I want the mathematical kind of behavior, not bankers rounding. And the bankers rounding thing has to do with banks and over time the averages of how many dollars and cents that they get that are even and odd that on balance on their books. I think it has it comes out to be statistically equivalent and it's easier. I'm not really sure, but I want to find the right function. Yeah, because there's a bias towards the higher number, which okay, I want that bias. That's how math has always worked in my head. So the question is, how do we get that behavior? And maybe the answer, phantom override, you might be ultimately right, is like, just use decimal. Which, okay, that'd be fine. Yeah, math ceiling has the same problem though, because if in you, well, does it? Because if you say, because then it's going to be, if I did, okay, import math ceiling of 9.4, that's going to go to 10, right? Which is not what we want either. So I want the math rounding behavior that I learned in math class, where and which I expect that customers are going to also expect, and not, I don't want to have to document, hey, here's how bankers rounding works. Like that's not going to be an acceptable answer to a customer. So I think the answer might be to use decimal, perhaps. Let's see if we can search for some other stuff. Python, say not bankers rounding. See what comes up. Like, this is a ridiculous article. How to round numbers in Python. I'm sorry, I love Python as a language, but this seems like a wart. Like, this should not be something that I have to think about. I don't know. I'm probably getting way more upset about this than I should be. I'm not upset, but bothered, irritated, jovially. There's math ceiling. Yeah, okay. Like, look at this stuff. It's just way more complicated. Good grief. There's like tables. This is just silly. I could make my own rounding function. True. These are all good points. I don't want to, though. I want a statistical mean that will round to a decimal place. So maybe decimal is the right answer. Man, is that really the way to go, though? All right. Let's look at the decimal library and see what we can see. Fixed point and floating point arithmetic. All right, well, here we go. Decimal is based on a floating point model, which was designed with people in mind. In the same way you learn at school. All right, well, joke's on me. Use decimal. So what does that mean we need to do? Add everything up, quantize to, what's the Stack Overflow? So we get a number, wrap it, say quantize to 0. Thanks for the link, by the way. What's this question? How to properly round up. I love Stack Overflow. They've got an answer for that. Yeah, like imagine, and maybe some of you are, imagine if you're a new Python programmer and you're just poking around with the round built-in function. You're like, I got this. And you see this behavior. That would be a real head scratcher. Okay, let's just go to the solution. So let's use decimal. Let's still do the summation with the integers. And yeah, we'll do the floating point math and then just pump it into decimal at the last stage. How about that? Will that get it? So we've got we'll say drop this here, put it there, bad formatting, and say average. And I'm going to leave a comment that says something like sane rounding, because I'm feeling cheeky. And we'll do decimal. What was the thing? Take the value, quantize to 0, and round half up. Okay, I can do that. Average. Oh, is that going to return a decimal though? And then can we cast that to int? Or should we cast that to int? Probably. Well, it might display the same way, so let's see. Actually, let's test it out over here. From decimal import, decimal, and what was it, round half up? Whoops. Control A doesn't take me to the beginning. Of course not. Decimal. Okay. And now we want decimal. Gosh, why does that word look weird to me? We'll say test with 9.4 and 9.5 like before. So 9.4 and then quantize. Okay, good point. Round half up. So we get decimal 9. Cool. And we should get decimal 10, right? All right, so now, so you can cast it to an int once it's been quantized. You'll have some issues if you try to perform operations on floats. Yeah, I think the nice part is like this is, I think I would leave it in decimal if I needed to do further computation with it. But since this is like the end stage of this report for now, I think I could get away with putting it as an int. But how's it going to, well, all right, here's the really important part. How's it going to display? And maybe, I mean, isn't the REPL already kind of indicating how it will display? No, it's doing the repr. So if we do stir on it, that's what we care about. Will it show up as a 10? Show up as a 10 string, which the template should render as a 10. All right, cool. So we've got quantize 0, and we're going to say half round up. And we've got some stuff we need to import. So we're going to go back to the top and say from decimal import. What's going to come below? iSort's going to order these funny. So half round up, I think, is going to come first because it's all caps. Is that right? Well, I'll let iSort. I've got a pre-commit hook that's going to check me if I'm wrong. Whoops. Round half up. Haha. Round half up. Is there also a half up? No? Okay. I don't know why my editor was suggesting half up. All right. And then we'll come back here and fix this. All right. So what's going to come out here? Oh, I said I was going to put it as an integer. That's going to make the types match up with the assertion on the test. All right, test pass, great. So we're back to some set of working stuff. We actually, I think, have everything planned out appropriately now. And we're still not testing this condition. That's another test that needs to be written. I'll probably do that one offline because that's a boring one to check. The other thing that I think we should test is this is the single case. That's also boring. We should get a more advanced test, which I think we could simulate by just putting in another grade. So let's do that. We'll put in a grade and come up with our own score here. So we'll give the grade we'll get a computed value that we know the answer to, right? Or we should. So we'll say the first grade is a score of 50. And the second grade, which we don't need to track, well, I guess we do. Grade 2 is a score of 100. So if I know my math correctly, which I hope I do, that should be an average of 75, right? And so I could do that computation, but since I've hard-coded the values here, I'll say 75. And also, I guess this is going to get both grades listed. That right? Oh, dagger. All right. What did I get wrong? Oh. This thing is now wrong. But that we don't care about that assert anymore anyway. Aha, more stuff is wrong. Index 0. So it's only showing a single grade object instead of 2. Why? Some part of my logic is not working right. Might need to step through here and figure out. So where I expect this to work is as it comes through the second grade. So this should go through this twice, and we can go through the debugger again if we need to. Second time should pass. I have saved this time, so that should be good. It should be appending to the course info. And this course info is it's overwriting this local variable. It's not like it's replacing it. And so that it appends to the grades here. So I would expect on the else side of this, that second grade is coming through. Now it could be that my test data is not correct and what is going on in my head is not actually happening. I expect this grades loop to have 2 things in it from the test that I just wrote. And as far as I can tell, these are the same. I'm using the same grade factory and just change the score. Sometimes just talking it out, a little rubber duck, which I don't, but would be cool. So really what's happening is this grade factory it's walking up the tree and says, okay, I don't have a graded work. There's nothing common here. So we need a common course, is really what's missing between these 2 grades. Those will show up in the same chunk. There's probably actually a second list item here that's not appearing. And in fact, I think if we do test nearest and toss in VV, we'll probably see a list. It's like it was saying the first elements are different, but yeah, look, there's a whole different course structure, and they've got the course averages. That's 2 separate things, so it's not even mixed together. All right, so that's the problem of the test setup and not necessarily the code. I'm still confident that the code is hopefully working. I'm confident that the code is working. So we want a course factory to correct this problem, and we'll say the course grade levels is equal to the enrollment grade level. And that'll give us a common grade level for the 2 different courses to hang on to. And that will also give us, yeah, I think that's good. So we can now replace a bunch of this stuff that I've left way too long. We'll replace that with course. Actually, let's try and ditch that trailing comma, see if it shrinks it down. Nope, leaves it that long form. Okay, that's the way it is. Retest, and hopefully they match up. They do. Hey, hooray. So we can go back and did I already delete that assert? We don't need this assert anymore. We don't care about that. The template's totally broken right now. We're not matching up with our new data structure, but we can go fix that. So I think at this stage, I'm pretty confident that the context is being built properly. We went over this looping scheme for performance reasons, and we're ready to now return to the template and use the course stuff that's there to build out the same kind of thing. So let's go back to the progress report template, and instead of having this grades thing to check, we now need to check for courses, and then it will do its business here. And the course, so the loop is going to change to what? We can get rid of the regroup. That's not needed anymore. And course list is not the thing anymore. We want to iterate over courses. And courses is going to be a bunch of course info. So it's going to be a list of things that we care about. So I'm going to call that course info locally, because that was the variable name that I used in the context. And we should be able to come down into where is the course used. So the course now needs to be prefixed by course info because it's a dictionary access. So there's that part. And what else? So the coursework is still mixed in. So all of this grade stuff is still correct. I think the only real change here to get this back to its working state is to put course info.grades. So it pulls from that list. All right, let's check it out. So we're going to fire up the local server again, return back to the page, and with any luck, this page looks identical, dates match up. So remember February, March, orders all the same. I just hit refresh. It's all good. Hooray. So we did all that work to see no physical change in the page, but this is the start. So let's put it on the debug toolbar, fire it up again, and now let's inspect visually from the debug toolbar that we have the data that we expect to see. So we can go over to the template part and blow up the context and see here it is. Here's our glorious structure that we've built, and it's got numbers in there, numbers that have been calculated that we can do some spot checking to see if it's right. So here's a 98 for, what is this, handwriting 2. So what are the grades in there? Handwriting 2, 98. So 100 and 195. Yeah, 98 seems right. I can't, I'm sure it's some fractional amount, but it's pretty close. So now we need to throw in the last row that will have the actual average value. And so we'll put in, so there's, if we want to only display this average when there actually are grades, but we know that this report will only, the way we put this whole thing together is there will only be courses with grades in them, which ultimately may come back to bite me. I can totally imagine my customer saying, hey, I want to know when there are courses that have no grades, or I can imagine a customer saying that, but I'm not going to worry about that part for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire flex row and I'm going to paste it outside of the for loop, and I'm going to clear out we'll delete this tag content and delete the completed date stuff. And here is where I want to say change the inside of this to be course info course average. There's no information that's added there yet, but it should just show the number. All right, cool. There's a number at the bottom. But that number is like lacking all context right now, so now we need to throw on the message. So we'll go up to the row above it, and actually we can delete this and make this 2/6. I think because it's left aligned, it won't be any visually different, but we'll just delete some markup that is like hidden under here. And then we can also change this text to be what? So, it's Flexbox, so what is it? Text. I don't want to float it. Definitely don't want to float it. So it's one of these justify attributes that I can never quite remember. How about justify right? And I guess we need to change the tag to include the word average. Okay, so justify right was wrong, but we got the word average in there, which is the piece that we need to see. And again, the effect I'm going for is I'm going to put it right here next to the number. That's my plan. So we need to come into Tailwind CSS, look at the stuff, and look at the flex attributes. Justify end? I don't know. But that applies for the whole container, right? So this is not a container level element, which is wrong. This is a alignment content area. So content end, let's try that. So we'll, and I picked a terrible spot for this. It should be somewhere else. So let's get rid of that, because I like to keep, like, these are text small and font light are attributes about the text, and to like interrupt those with stuff about Flexbox seems super weird. So we'll say content end. I think that'll do. Not ent. We're not Lord of the Rings here. Clear out some stuff. Oh, come on now. What can we do? What is it? I don't think this is right, but of course it is. Hopefully that didn't do a float. Let's go make sure that text right is not doing an actual float, because that would be nasty, nasty. Like, I don't like floats ever anymore, but I believe it's just a text alignment. Okay, text align right. All right, that is what we want, and it works with Flexbox. So where does that leave us? We're down to, we got rounding stuff done, and do we have the feature? Does it look, now here's the kind of like step back, and does it look okay? I think, if I'm being honest, it looks a little weird. So maybe, what looks weird about it to me? The spacing, like there's, yeah, let's play with the spacing for a minute. So there's got this margin, this padding right 8. Okay, whatever. How about we change that to, let's increase the padding on the vertical to be, let's give it some breathing room, maybe say 4. Well, that's gonna fiddle with a bunch of stuff. We can do the other one too. So I'm just kind of marking this up here for the moment, just to get a feel for it. So if we had an average like that, okay, that starts to look a little better. What if it was not so far away? It looks really distant, and I want the two to actually kind of hang together. So what if I said padding 4, bring it closer? That, like we've got the two side by side, or vertically, you know what I mean. Here's one average, here's the other. This is at least calling out and say like, this is a separate thing. I don't know, it's still not perfect, but I like it better than this tight and separate stuff here. So let's make that change and call it a night. Change that to 4, change that to, what did I say, 4? They both need to be 4. And change this to 4. And let's return to the code and refresh. And now we've got this new version. And there's other optimizations that we can make here, like does someone need to see an average when there's a single task? Technically, no, but does it matter? Are people actually going to care? I am pleased to see that the averaging seems to be working correctly. Like here's a good example. I know this would have been 97.5, right? And it's averaging, it's rolling it up to 98. So that feels pretty good. The scheme that's within SchoolDesk right now is a very simple score average of whatever numbers, whatever integer you want to put in there. You could actually, I think, even give negative numbers. I don't do any weighting on those numbers. So this average computation that we've put into this view could be more complicated in the future, because I've inspected other products, and they offer a variety of calculations of different people want to do their courses differently. So my spouse is just like, let me do totals and just, it's fine. She doesn't really care about that stuff, and she just wants out of 100 everything's equal weight right now. But that's probably because we have elementary school kids and we don't have tests and rubrics and all this other stuff that might eventually come along for the ride. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. But I can imagine customers will want to change that. Although at this stage, she is my customer and she's the one that's interested in this, and there's nobody else clamoring for this. So this is pure addition, and I've made my customer happy. So I'm kind of pleased with where that is. It's got the average in there. It's all the computation that she wants, and so that's pretty cool. So I think that really solves this. I can't commit this right now and push this out live, but that's because there's mostly a chunk of missing code coverage. I think it's the case where there are no grades, and maybe there's coverage there. So let's try running coverage, but I suspect that every test that I wrote that checks that view puts in at least 1 grade, although I could be wrong. So now that I say that, I might actually be wrong, because I think there's a test that checks that. Well, I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to let this run, and we'll ride this out, and that'll be the end of the stream for this evening. I will take this content and post it up on YouTube. Appreciate you joining in. Appreciate the discussion. I'm not sure who you are, Phantom Override, DODer, but I'm sure I can find out later. Appreciate your input and your assistance. That's really awesome. So we've got what level of coverage? Okay. Missing a couple lines, and I'll get to those. Missing coverage in the gateway. Interesting. Fascinating. I'll get to those, and again, these streams get put up on YouTube later for people that are interested in checking out on any details that we might have missed. Next time, I don't have any big overarching plan for new features at this stage. I'm still when I'm not working on stream and chipping away at the quality and the polish that my customer is wanting to work on, I'm actually working on things that don't really stream well, which is like documentation and research about competitors. So I can quickly outline, I guess, that. So I have documentation pages. Some of these are intended to be for SEO. And so I looked at, for instance, Google Classroom and compared it to compared the feature set, described what it has, compared it to SchoolDesk. But I'm being really honest in these assessments. I'm not really trying to trumpet up features that I don't have. I'm just trying to highlight what does Google Classroom offer that SchoolDesk doesn't, and vice versa. And some of that is just to kind of breed goodwill of like, there are going to be other tools that people will use that are better for different reasons. Like the model that SchoolDesk has chosen as the way of doing scheduling is not for everybody. For instance, SchoolDesk is all about building dates and putting that schedule out there for you and kind of dictating, here's when you need to do things based on you gave us this number of tasks. We're just building the schedule automatically. But if you're a kind of person that wants to manually pick dates and move things around, SchoolDesk is a really bad fit. And so those are the kind of things that I want to highlight. So when I'm not working on actual code stuff, this is the kind of stuff that I'm doing in order to work on marketing and then sharing that with different forums and trying to drive up interest. That's how I've gotten some of my signups from actual homeschool families that are really using that. And so we don't talk necessarily a ton about the actual like SaaS elements or how to build and marketing strategies, probably because I don't think it streams well. Like if you saw me writing documentation about and doing the research, that gets very into the actual niche area that I'm focused on, where I'm very transparent and trying to say that this stream is about the actual code development, which I think is important. But you also need to remember that for all the stuff that I cover on here, there's a whole category of stuff that I'm not covering to actually help drive this and make it a useful tool. So I think all that's to say is we'll continue to work on polish and features, and eventually as I start to get other users, I've got a couple that are interested, and they I'm sure will have their own feedback. And then I do have some long-term visions for what's the social hook in this system, that how would I get other people, assuming I get a small kernel of initial customers, what is the hook that I can incentivize those customers to actually share SchoolDesk, aside from being happy customers? I want to delight them, but actually give them some motivation to do some recruiting or marketing on my behalf. And so I have kind of an more of a referral system in mind that I think I want to be able to offer like some discounts, so that if they refer somebody and that person signs up and joins as a paying member of SchoolDesk, then the person who did the referral will get some kind of discount on their next plan subscription. And so those are features that are like in my mind of things I want to do, but they're just not like top of the to-do list at this time. So we'll get to them eventually, but we'll continue to chip away at these code things and hopefully learn things about bankers rounding and all these other aspects of the sometimes the quirks that exist in Python. Hopefully you found this useful tonight. Thanks for joining in, and I hope you all have a good night. Take care.